Gurbax Sahota is the president and CEO of California Association for Local Workforce, economic, I know, all right. Local economic development, and is an experienced association professional who believes in the importance and need to collaborate and create meaningful partnerships in order to accomplish the goal of creating healthy, wealthy communities. We like that. Gurbax turns this belief into action by aligning and leading multiple organizations focused on promoting economic development and helping business thrive in California. Gurbax holds senior positions with CALED, which is the California Enterprise Development Authority. No, that's not the, all right. Two different things, I'm sorry. CALED and the California Enterprise Development Authority and the California Academy for Economic Development. In addition to leading these organizations, Gurbax advances her passion for supporting economic development in California by serving on the boards and advisory panels of several organizations such as the Agricultural Technology Innovation Partnership Foundation. You need an acronym for that. Okay, all right. The Council of Development Finance Agencies, the Advisory Board for the Northern California SBDC Network, and the Expert Advisory Panel for the Smart Grid Infrastructure Build-Out Initiative. She believes economic development is key to creating a better quality of life for all California residents and is honored to play a role in that by leading the CALED team. Please welcome Gurbax Sahota to the team.
That was quite an introduction, but it's okay. So for the Calaveras folks, I think this is the third time I've been in this venue speaking to you, including Jamie from Amador, as well as the fourth time I've been up here because of our EDA grant and the work we're doing in Calaveras. Don't worry, I'm not going to say the same things, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions that you guys should know the answers to because you've heard me speak so many times. Today, my role is to get the conversation started about collaboration. And by get the conversation started, that means I'm going to ask you guys questions. It's really important that today is about having a dialogue about economic development, having a dialogue about what your goals are and what it is that you want to achieve as a region. So I'm going to cover demystifying economic development, the value of regionalism, and I have some model practices I want to share with you if time allows. But I can talk long, I realized that last week, so somebody give me 5 minutes when I'm close. I'm looking at this front table right here. Cool. All right, so let's start off, and actually before I get to this, just by a quick raise of hands, how many people in this audience are elected officials? Great. Great to see so many of you here because you are the champions. You're the voice, you're the ones that set the tone for how economic development is perceived in your community and how it moves forward in your community. So glad to see so many of you here. How many of you are practitioners? Meaning that you're the ones with the economic development title doing the work of economic development. Great, so you guys are also going to know the answers to my questions. Don't answer them. This is really about getting dialogue started. And I do want to recognize a couple of folks. Randy Starbuck as well as Larry Cope have served in leadership positions on several of the organizations that I participate in, and they are experts in economic development. Thank you for your service, and it's great to see both of you here as well. Okay, so as I ask you these questions, know that there's no wrong answer, but your answer might not match mine. So. That's okay, because we need to talk about what is economic development. That's my first question. What's economic development to your county? Anybody? How do you define economic development? Prosperity. Thank you, sir, for going first. Anybody else? Prosperity. Sustainability. Is that all you guys are thinking about in regards to economic development? You're here because you want prosperity and sustainability. Is there more? I heard vitality. I heard jobs. What did I miss? Education. Somebody over here said something very quietly. Did you say strength in business? Yes. Yes. money, better tax base, quality of life, digital literacy. So that's a great list. It's a great starting point, and it really speaks to how we define economic development. And we want everyone to be on the same page of what this definition is. You know, I mentioned this last week when I was here. One of the biggest issues in economic development is making sure that we do have the same definition of what economic development is. And it gets very muddled when you hear conversations about one-off topics that are related to economic development, but that don't really speak to the entire value of what it is. When we talk about economic development and we're training elected officials at the state level, whether we're talking to folks at the federal level or elected leaders at the local level, the conversation we start with them is that economic development is about the creation of wealth in which community benefits are realized. So the creation of wealth through which community benefits are realized. And if you think about that, that's kind of a circle, right? You're creating wealth in the community so that you can raise revenue, so that you can provide the services that you need for a good quality of life for your residents. But in order to get that revenue, you have to have some of those components already in place. So it's a big circle, but it really is, from our perspective, when we're talking about economic development, very focused on the creation of wealth and broad-based prosperity. So keep that in mind. And what happens from that big definition is then you start taking that to your own county and saying, what does that mean to us? So if economic development is the creation of wealth through which community benefits are realized, what is it that our community wants from our economic development program? And you guys shared some of that. Might be that your county is focused on sustainability. Maybe your county is focused on the fact that we need to improve the skills of our labor force. Maybe your economic development strategy is tied to the fact that we've got great businesses, but we need to strengthen them so they can continue to grow and continue to contribute. In rural areas, one of the things I heard consistently, one of the challenges was keeping your population. Our economic development strategy is about how do we keep the youth in the community so they don't go away to college, get educated, and never come back. So that broad definition becomes really unique to what it is that you're trying to accomplish locally. It's more than a jobs program. Jobs are an important outcome of the work you do, but they're not what you do. Economic developers don't create jobs. What you all are doing is creating an environment and a network through which businesses can thrive. And through thriving, they're going to create jobs to support your local economy. And it's important that you're clear on that. One of the other things that we see that's always concerning to me is when we see economic developers and their sole metric for success is jobs. How many jobs have you kept? How many jobs have you brought in? Well, if you understand economic development, you understand it's much broader than that, and it's specific to your community. Economic development is also strategic. It's not a one-off. It's not, I've got this industrial center, we need to put something there. It's really about engaging your community, engaging the way that you guys are engaging today and talking about what is it that we want, what is it that our residents want and support. Is it that, look, we like our small town feel. We don't want a bunch of big businesses up here. Or is it that, look, we can have the small town feel in this area, but this is a great retail core that we can develop. Or maybe we want to be more focused on tourism because we think that's a way to sustain our economy beyond whatever's already currently thriving. So it's unique to your community, it's strategic, and it's measurable. When you leave here, and especially in the afternoon as you're having conversations about what you want to achieve regionally or locally, you should have metrics tied to that at the end of the day, you can say, this is what success looks like. So my next question, what are the benefits of economic development? What does success look like in your community? If you had a successful economic development program that was doing everything that you wanted it to do, what would that look like in your community? Throw out a metric beyond jobs. Community health. You mean like physical health or both? Okay, community health. If you had a good program, you'd have a healthy community. Anybody else? I heard somebody in the back say something about workers. Decent wages for your workers, absolutely. And then somebody over here. Educational opportunities? Yes. What else? You've got health, wages, educational opportunities. Say that again, sir? Lower incarceration rates. Yes. What else? I mean, you guys are here for a purpose. When you showed up, you thought, I want economic development in the community. I want to be a champion. This is what I want to see in my community. Okay, education. Awesome. What else? Population retention, yes. Planning and zoning. So maybe business-friendly planning and zoning, is that fair to say? Okay. Diverse jobs. Reduction in poverty. That's right, workforce housing. So that's a good list. And as you look at the things that we mentioned in that list, if that's the goal of your community, what's the benchmark? Where are you now? And then how do you measure that going forward? I can't tell you enough how important it is that, especially when you're doing economic development, that understanding it's unique to your community, that you have metrics that tie back specifically to what it is that you're trying to achieve. There is no one singular metric across every community that we've been able to identify as this is the metric of a successful economic development program, because it's very specific to what you're trying to achieve. That said, when you have individual specific goals for your community, whether that's at the city level, at the county level, it makes it very hard to start thinking regionally, because you're thinking about, okay, what do I want in my city? What do I want in my county? But there's a lot of benefits to regionalism. Before I talk about that, I'm just going to go through the list. When we're talking about benefits of economic development, some of the things we talk about, increased revenue base in particular. You guys are under the stress if you're in the public sector. If you don't have a PERS liability, you're really lucky, but that's a huge issue for a lot of our jurisdictions. You've got to get revenue. You've got to pay your police and fire. You've got services that your residents are expecting. You've got to pay your employees. So increased revenue base is an important metric, or at least an outcome of a successful economic development program. Business retention, keeping the businesses that you already have here. So not just people retention, business retention. Economic development diversification, economic diversification. You can't be a one-trick pony, right? I think we've all learned that through different changes we've seen. Self-sufficiency, not being reliant on the federal government, state government, or other entity to give you resources or to be able to help you. I think all of us want that, that feeling of independence. We can make it on our own. We've got a solid economic development plan. Great if you can help us, but we're not going to fail if you don't. And then productive use of property. One of the trends, and it's been going on for some time, but more so with the loss of redevelopment, what we saw is jurisdictions mapping out their assets. What properties do we own? Are there any that we can use for the benefit of economic development in our community? And how is that going to happen? So productive and highest use of property. Those are some of the benefits we talk about. Now, I want to talk about regionalism, but I think that you guys will be really interested in something else along the lines of metrics that we saw. A couple of months ago, Site Selector magazine put out a list. They met with different site selectors from around the country and said, what are the most important location criteria you're looking at in a community when you're looking to bring a business there? Who can guess what number one is? Absolutely. Employees, workforce skills. Do you have enough people and are they trained? Number one issue. It's not incentives and how much money can you throw at us. In fact, that was number 9 on the list. What about number 2? I heard someone say housing. Housing didn't even make the top 10 list. It's definitely an issue for California. but it didn't make the list for this national survey. It's transportation infrastructure. Number 2, transportation infrastructure. Number 3, utilities and the cost and reliability of utilities. So when you're thinking about the components of your economic development program, and we talk about that circle, right, the things you need to have in place to help your businesses thrive so that you can have a successful economic development plan, be real on what it is that you need in the community to attract and keep that. All right, why regional matters. Okay, you guys are here for a regional event. Why are you here? Why do you think it's important to be here as a region to work together? I'm going to have you repeat that, sir. You said?
I said we gain more working together than we do standing on our own.
That's right. You gain more working together versus standing on your own. What else? Be more efficient. Absolutely. Great ideas. Yeah, learning from each other. Absolutely. All right. I'm running tight on time, I feel, so I'm going to go down my list as well. I feel like you have more impact, and also resources are scarce, so there's a need to, right? It's not just, there's a big issue that we see across the state, the controversy about local control. I've got my area, I want to make sure my area prospers, I want control over decision making here, but the reality is as resources become more scarce, we do have to start thinking more regionally. And it's not just the urban areas. I feel in rural areas in particular, you guys are very challenged because your assets are so spread out. So one county may or may not have everything a jurisdiction will need to be successful in economic development. So you're almost forced into partnering, but that's not a bad thing. You compete better as a region. I know for federal programs as well. And you guys, when you speak, if you have something to add on to that, Kim, I think one of the conversations we've heard from our federal partners in particular is we have scarce resources. If we're contributing, we'd rather see a regional impact than just a local impact. We want the most out of the money that we're contributing. And we've heard that with some of our private sector partners as well. Regionalism matters because it increases your population base, right? When you're in a rural community. We had a USDA grant to do some work in Imperial, and what we were trying to do is show that they had the workforce to support bringing in a back office operation, like a teleconference center, well, telecommunication center or telemarketing center. We had to count the population that was coming across from Mexico into the area to show that the population base existed. It wasn't just imperial base. That boundary didn't matter. It had to be regional or they didn't have the numbers. And they actually had that traffic coming in, so it was part of their metric. But increasing your population to show that you do have the capacity to either attract or to retain the businesses that you have there. The other thing is regionalism allows you to leverage your resources, especially as we're talking about assets. Physical. How many of you, when you market yourself, talk about your proximity to Yosemite or the Sierras? Right? That's an asset that may or may not be in your county, but it's a regional asset for all of you. And if it's not physical, it could be just a name. Do you guys know where the San Francisco outlets are? In Livermore. 50 miles east, and drive time, I would imagine that's like an hour and a half, but I'm not from the Bay Area, I don't know that. But I mean, just, yeah, leveraging the name of a region. One of the things, I met a gentleman, a professional economic developer from Alabama, and he was responsible for a lot of small towns, so not counties, not necessarily cities, but towns. And what the towns had done, it all collaborated. They put money into a pot and they said, look, we're going to hire you. We want you to accomplish these 5 things for all of our communities. And because they put their money in together, they could get meaningful support from him, whereas individually, not one of those communities could afford his services. So sometimes it's hard money. And then sometimes it's branding, right? Bay Area. What's the Bay Area? Is it Stockton? Does Stockton count as the Bay Area? Does Oakland count as the Bay Area, the East Bay Area? So sometimes it's just having that cool name that you can say, this is the region I'm from. When you show up from a region, I feel like you have more influence than when you show up from just one jurisdiction, depending upon what it is that you're trying to promote and accomplish. So it increases your voice, your area of influence. One example I always thought was interesting, and Barbara, you probably know this as well. How many of you are familiar with UC Davis and know where it is? Okay, what do you think their area of influence is when they're talking about how they have an impact regionally? Last time I checked, it was 9 counties. And that's probably accurate. I did not read their most recent report, so I don't know now what they're counting. But, I mean, it's a region. It's not just we have impact on Davis. Also, businesses and workforce don't recognize city and county boundaries. If I live in Calaveras, I would probably like to work in Calaveras, but if there's a great job opportunity in Tuolumne, is that going to stop me from going to Tuolumne? Probably not, depending upon the drive and your appetite for it. And collaboration beyond boundaries is also important. So when we talk about regionalism, we talk very specifically about geography, but sometimes it's also boundaries of organizations, right? It's not just how are you working with the neighboring county, it's also how are you working with other organizations that have similar missions but may or may not be doing the same work that you're doing. So this conversation you're going to have in the afternoon about collaboration should transcend boundaries, whether we're talking about geographic or organizational. It gives you the opportunity to create more impact, to leverage your resources, and allows everyone to be more effective if you're clear on what your specific role is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about model practices if I have time, and I'm looking at you all to say, I've got 5 minutes. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk fast, and I'm only going to give you a couple of examples under each one. Keep going? Okay, so model practices. Dave asked me to share with you some of the things we're seeing in the areas of business retention and expansion, business attraction, and business creation. So business retention and expansion, some of the best practices we see. If you don't know, and if you haven't heard this metric, IDC did a survey or a study in the last year or two, and one of the things they found is over 80% of net job growth comes from your already existing businesses. So think about that. If job growth is important to you, creating broad-based policies and programs and support for your already existing businesses is a very meaningful and effective way to reach that job development metric. Probably more effective than attraction, because what's the likelihood, and I don't know the answer to this, that it would be easy for you all to bring in a business that had 200 high-paying jobs? Larry's saying, yes, it happens every day in Tuolumne. No, it doesn't? Okay. So business retention is a very key and important component of economic development. So some of the great things that we've seen, Calaveras Business Resource Center, I can't say enough about it. The Calaveras folks know about it, Dave mentioned it, but great partners across organizations coming together to help their existing businesses thrive. Fresno has a BEAR program, business expansion and retention, and it's technology-based, and it's through the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. And so what happens is any partner that's working with a business can put in notes to the system and say, I've worked with this business, this is what's happening. And so that way the workforce person, the community college person, the city and county people can all see, oh, this is the contact that's already been had. Maybe I can help further, I'm going to go in. But what they were constantly doing is adding in service providers so that everyone was communicating, kind of crowdsourcing assistance for this business. So a great technology platform example. Keeping existing employers profitable. So one of the consistent things you'll know about BRE programs is they have these cool names. KEEP is one of them. BEAR is one of them. The KEEP program that stood out to me in particular, it was really focused on the elected officials going out and paying thank you visits to the already existing businesses. So obviously business recognition events. You know, I know a lot of organizations do business visits where you have the city or county staff that are going out, or maybe the chamber staff going out. It's very different when the elected officials are going out and saying, just thank you. Thank you for being in our community. We really value you. And speed dating for business, and I think, Larry, you might have done this as well. We saw in upstate California first is where I'd seen the example, but it was this notion they had made the decision that we know we're not going to compete when it comes to business attraction, but we can help our already existing employers. And so we have this great ag base, ag manufacturers, and we have a lot of restaurants and hotels and other venues that can take advantage of the great quality foods that are being produced here. Let's have a meet and greet event. It was like speed dating, right? You'd meet, but it was for the intentional purpose of getting deals. I have cheeses and wines. You need cheeses and wines. I'm here local. This is the deal I can give you. Let's make a deal. Very intentional and very much so about supporting the local businesses there. So business retention examples. Attraction, I'm just going to say SACTO, and Barbara is speaking, and she might have some great examples, but regional attraction efforts in particular, I feel are very effective. Collaborative marketing, right, where you guys pull your resources together. We have groups like Team California that go out and do road shows. SACTO is a great regional example for collaborative marketing. Another attraction example, Select USA and GoBiz. I know the Calaveras folks are familiar, but how many of you are familiar with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development? Right, so it's important that you all connect, if you haven't already, with them, because one of the things they do is they have that large booth at the Select USA event where you get these foreign dignitaries that come in, and it's for the promotion, it's for the express intent of promoting our state and the regions within our state for outside foreign direct investment. So you've got the state and the feds that are partnering on this, and because it's the state that's going, all of your counties, your region can go and be part of that group and be represented there. I'm going to skip to creation, so I'm not cutting into other folks' time. Business creation, how many of you have entrepreneurship programs in your communities where you're helping your entrepreneurs? I see a couple. All right, I asked this question last week. Jamie and Calaveras folks, you know the answer already. If you start a business in this county, in your county, how likely are you to leave? Probably not likely, right? Like if I started a business in Calaveras, it would take a lot to get me to get out, because obviously you're from there, your family ties are there, you're there, your success is there, that's where you started. It would take a lot to get you to move and expand. So helping entrepreneurs that are looking to grow, some of the things that we've seen in Sonoma County, they have a great data support service where they will help businesses or entrepreneurs who are looking to create a business with data analysis saying, this is your market, this is what we have here, help you create a marketing plan, even a business plan. And it might be through review of that data that you find out, well, my business is probably not best suited for here, or maybe I need to look at another opportunity if this is where I want to grow. But that data support service is very valuable. As most of you know, you should have a solid business plan before you go into business. It helps in that success rate. Another one is the Fresno Lyle Center, teaching your youth to be entrepreneurs. I think we've all asked kids, I know I have, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know, you get those answers of, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policewoman, I want to be president. How about getting them to think more thoughtfully about, I want to be my own boss. I want to have a bunch of employees, and I want to accomplish this, or I want to create things. So teaching your youth, and I believe that there's already, Fresno Lyle Center, I mentioned that in particular because I believe that they're working with one of your community colleges here on entrepreneurship training in particular. So it's not just that, okay, this person has an idea and we're providing them support. It's this, look, we've got youth in the community that we can teach them about another option other than being someone's employee. We can teach them to think about, what if I had my own business? So it's a different school of thought. Also in business creation, I do want to hit incubators, maker labs, and maker spaces. Just because you have a building does not mean that it should be an incubator or it could be a great maker lab or a great maker space. You have to have more than that. You have to have metrics, you have to have goals that you're trying to achieve, and you have to have realistic expectations. And when we talk about communities that have a building that start an incubator and think they're going to pop out the next Apple within 2 years, that's great, but I would say that's more luck than realistic, right? If you're going to start down the path of creating these support centers, be realistic about what you can achieve, have a graduation time, so 2 years from now, whether you're super successful or not, we've got to move you out because we've got other entrepreneurs on the way that need this support. So incubators, all those types of maker labs, maker spaces are great if they're thoughtful and you've put some real real effort into deciding what is it that you're willing to contribute, how much time are you willing to give to see success out of it, and at what point do you kick an entrepreneur out because they haven't succeeded and it's time to get the next business in. So that's some of what we're seeing happening across the state. I'd just like to close with sharing a few things that I think that you all can do. Across the state, there is not a community that says to us, we are doing so well, we have so many resources for economic development, it's not an issue. I've yet to hear that, and I can't wait for the day that I do, but we haven't heard it. So given that the majority of our communities have the challenge of limited resources for economic development, same for the state, be clear about who you are as a community, what your regional assets are, what your competitive advantage is. Be realistic about what your competitive disadvantage is. That doesn't mean go outside and say negative things about your community. That means know that you have this challenge and address it and account for it as you're doing your strategy for economic development. Be clear about what you want. So when someone says to you, what are the metrics of success for your economic development program? Maybe you have 3 things, and you can rattle them off really quickly. Be clear about what you want. Be clear about each organization's role. City's going to do this, county's going to do this, regional organizations are going to do this, the state organizations are going to partner with us this way, workforce is going to do something else, the feds are going to do something else. Everybody needs to be clear on what your role is in the success and how you're moving forward. And the final piece, be clear on what success looks like. That goes to that metrics piece. Be clear that you know what success looks like. So that's it for my time. I appreciate your attention. Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the conversations that come out of this. So, Dave?